think I had it.
Are we recording?
Yes.
Oh, we are. Okay.
I had it as like a more readable color, and there was too much going on in the painting.
Yeah.
That there was not enough air, so I had to take it down to this color to make it work.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, what's always interested me about your work is that there's layering, but since that's, oh, you were going to do like an introduction to the theme.
I will, but you guys feel free.
Well, I was just going to say that the layering is not, whatever you're doing here is double. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, we're almost done here.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to CIC number 8. And today we're with Colin Thompson and Adam Simon, artists in New York and friends of mine. And today I'd like to speak with them about the topic of layering in painting, layering in art, layering in history, and the future, perhaps, of layering, but mainly to get into why they do it, where are they driving this topic of this strategy of layering, this technique, and what implications that they see in the whole strategy of layering in painting. Artists are layering, they're employing layering in their paintings, and painting is survived the death of painting, and it's thriving, of course, as it always would be. It's in the ambient here in New York and other city centers, the use of layering as a technique in painting. For example, Sam Jablon has an exhibition right now, but he would be the notable one that's enjoying a lot of success in his career. But there are many others, of course. If you start to catalog, I think it'd be exhausting to catalog. Today, I'd like to talk to you guys about your work. We're now in the studio of Colin Thompson, and thank you for opening your studios up for me. Later on, we're going to go to Adam's studio and continue the conversation. This issue of layering, because it's taken for granted, we kind of overlook how it's baked into the history of painting, and there would be intimations of layering, or that was known back then that a background we painted and a foreground would be applied, all in the service of illusionism, which carried forth through medieval painting, through Renaissance painting, through classical painting, and then the revolution, the dawn of modernity, and a kind of a desire to kill the father, which is a natural impulse, and that I see Manet's Luncheon on the Grass was a great exposition. It was a kind of, I don't know if you did it consciously or not, but for me, background and foreground had the same kind of ranking in the painting, and it was a kind of way. I don't know if it was a conscious attack. With Manet personally, my sense of it, I'm not sure if I'm looking at kind of incompetence that stumbled into genius, or that he was aware of it, or this was like a manifesto that he was employing. My prejudice is, let's set that aside, but I see that as a kind of thing that would be carried on through Cézanne, through the Cubist thing, through, finally to Greenberg with the declaration of flatness as the ultimate value in painting, in art. And this flatness would be the death of illusionism and a kind of the paintings as a physical fact. But then the revolution happened to that generation naturally. And the way I like to describe it is, and this is, don't want to go too far afield in my ideas about modernism and postmodernism, but I see that modernism is a desire to touch God through material means, and postmodernism is a pointing, not touching, to everyday life, not God, through conceptual, not material means. So it's kind of flipping of the script. And I'm basically embracing I'm putting under this sort of big house of postmodernism, pop, minimalism, and then conceptualism, and a whole bunch of other isms in between. and I see a solar wiz expression as art as a set of instructions in his wall drawings, I see it kind of as a layering thing. And it may be a conceit of mine, a conceptual conceit, but it's very fetching for me to see that this issue of layering is coming back after it was declared, the flatness was declared, it was repudiated in all of modernism. And then this post-modern and postmodern, post-20th century, where we are now, I see it flourishing and people employing layering as a thing, some consciously, some not so subconsciously. But I want to explore it in your works and your points of view. What you've thought about that, how you employ it, the issue of illusion, of maybe not pictorial depth, but it is like E.H. Gombrich writing about the art and illusion. There are certain visual keys that we are conscious of, that we manipulate. And so there's this issue of depth in your paintings. And at least in your paintings, it's a closer to my strategy of shallower depth. And in your paintings, I see deeper, more profound depth in it. And so this is what I'd like to open up with you guys. And since we're in Colin's studio, I think it's natural for you to.
Okay. Well, I guess what happened to me is I got to a point maybe about 25 years ago where I wanted to bring drawing into my painting. I'd always had some drawing going, but I wanted to bring it in emphatically. And I started using lines. And what I'm doing now kind of came out of, I've been building on that decision. So, once you have lines, you're putting one line over another, you get that layer idea going. And at first I wasn't quite sure how to use it. But over time, I've seen that I can develop this kind of almost a place in the paintings with my overlaps and with color. Because at this point right now, I think the color is really influencing how you see the different layers of the painting.
As an aside, when I was speaking with Gwen on the CIC number 6, we were talking about James Bishop, the difference between French perspective and the New York perspective, and he suggested, and maybe I don't quite understand what he was trying to tell me, but that line and color were fused in the minds of the supports and surfaces generation. I don't quite understand it completely, but in a way I see your lines as very fat lines, or constructed lines, and the color is the issue, isn't it?
The color is the issue, but I never start out a painting. I'll make preparatory drawings that there might be one. I do a lot of work on glassine with magic marker first and watercolor. So I'll have these characters that are going to appear on various levels of the painting, but I don't know what's going to happen when I put one layer over another. I can get some semblance by mocking it up with magic marker on glassine, but what the effect's going to be, I don't know, and what the final image is going to be, I don't know. So it's through the layering that I'm watching what's happening in the painting, and when something grabs me, hopefully I can go with that. So the layers are it would be like if you had a sculptor working in stone, and they're reaching the image, but just by taking stuff away, they don't have the option of putting in. But you're always, for me, I'm always kind of chasing my tail around a painting.
I think of it in terms of the battle plan never survives first contact kind of idea, that if you're not in trouble as you're painting, or that you're not surprised, or whatever plan you had going into it, if you're not challenged by some new information you encounter with the work you're doing as it's evolving. You're not really painting.
Well, I think what happens is you put one, you started painting with a brush, one color. That's how I started. And then once you put a second color down, that first color changes.
Because color is always contextual. So
Yeah, the more paint you get on the canvas, the more it's like throwing a pot. For me, anyway, you don't quite know what kind of light it's going to make eventually.
So you were pointing out before I think we started recording, that there's motifs in this large painting that's also in that smaller painting. And I'm trying to understand that in terms of what I thought was the process of making these paintings, which I was kind of, I guess, assuming that you're working with all these layers and forms on top of forms on top of forms until something strikes you as something you want to emphasize and allow to be dominant, right? Is that the way you work? Because that seems to contradict the idea that a motif that's in this painting on the top layer, more or less, is also going to be on that other painting. So I'm trying to.
Well, I mean, the other thing is that with the paintings, it's not. The painting's not only about the lines; it's about the viewing of what's inside the lines. And you could call that a ground, but you're looking through these shapes at other information. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
I just was wondering to what extent they evolve. Like, if there's an idea that you're going to end up with a motif on the most prominent most upfront layer, if you know that beforehand.
No, I don't.
You don't, right?
I don't, and I don't know how the color is going to arrange.
Right.
I mean, the one thing, when you put color on a white ground, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And some paintings I can keep that white ground behind my color. Like that painting didn't get too. It was a pretty fast shot to get the painting down.
the one on the
That one.
This large painting feels like there's a lot of white coming through.
Yeah, especially with the ground.
Yeah, it feels like it's backlit.
Yeah.
Almost.
But how it organizes is kind of different from painting to painting, especially since I don't know what the final image is going to be.
But there are you use washes, right, in between, right? Are you? Or am I seeing the absence of?
Like what you're seeing with the brown in that painting, the ochre.
Well, let's point to it here, because I'm thinking perhaps that this is more vivid here than it was here, or something like that. Or are you painting in order to?
You are painting in.
No, but I can definitely say I'm painting in, but all of this is left over from the initial.
Yeah. No, I meant that you're painting in the sense that the darkest color in this painting.
Oh yeah, yes.
is not a result of one paint color
exactly.
over another color. So and that's always intrigued
is
me.
This a study for this?
No. But like all of this, partly, what's exciting to me is the areas of the painting that have survived from the beginning. So you can see partially how what my initial drawing response was on the painting, and then how I worked from there.
So it goes from more of a free hand to
Yes.
more of a constructed
Yeah.
kind of line.
Yeah.
And at some point you're taping. Or?
No,
How are you making these straight edges?
I have a, a, a long, like pinstriping brush.
Huh? It's interesting because, there's your paintings are a little bit deceptive because they kind of suggest that everything is the result of spontaneous like interactions of,
Right.
of the forms, but in fact I've always been intrigued by the fact that the overlapped areas, not all of them, but a lot of the more prominent ones are literally painted in.
Right.
And now I'm realizing that you don't have like an easy mechanical way of making the bands or the forms, what you call the lines,
Right.
the width that they are. You actually have to go back and repaint the edges.
Yeah, well, but you
Right?
can see like the red here is that's one.
That's like one width of a brush.
Well,
that
no, it
brush
might
that width.
it might be a couple of widths, but if it's I think that part is acrylic, and it's on there with what is fast.
Oh, so you're combining acrylic and oil.
Well, the first parts are all acrylic
All acrylic.
because then I can really move quickly.
Yeah. I was wondering. I was realizing. I walked over to your paint table
Yeah.
to, make sure that I understood your work. That's all oil paint, and I was thinking, wow, the way that you work looks like it would be so much easier with acrylic.
No, there's a lot of the underpaintings done
Is
in acrylic.
Yeah.
And the quality of the paint on the canvas, like I was talking about the white ground before,
Yeah.
I couldn't paint that otherwise. I mean, a lot of the paintings have areas that I couldn't paint if I weren't using the layers. Because if I was trying to paint this, I'd never have that preconception
Oh, I see.
of what's going on in here.
So the layering strategy is a way of arriving at something that would be too much artifice otherwise, right?
Too much art, but
There's a way of arriving at a kind of this kind of pictorial expression without faking it or making it kind of artificial.
Right, because what the lines do, they make this window in. Like I'm kind of curating parts of the painting that you're seeing because the lines make it possible.
It occurred to me. I've had some questions for you actually, but about the general subject. But I was thinking that what's interesting about pairing Colin and I and this subject of layering is that we both came out of the New York studio school, and there might be a connection to the way that drawing was taught at the New York studio school, which involved a lot of erasure.
I'm excited. I love this. Yeah.
So
Sure.
it was working from observation, models. You had to draw a model for like 3 or 4 hours a day.
Plaster cast type of thing?
No, nude models.
Okay.
Which I loved as a 17-year-old teenager. You were encouraged. A lot of people used charcoal, and there was a lot of erasure. And those erased marks became a kind of template for whatever was the final drawing, right? And you see it in the work of Joyce Pensado, who was there with us.
Chris Wool.
You see it in Christopher Wool, who was there with us.
No kidding.
It's a common thread, and it's very much connected to this kind of layering, right?
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So,
And the other part is that the school, Cezanne was a hero in the school.
as was Giacometti, they both used a similar,
And once I got into doing these, these paintings, I was looking. I could never look at Cezanne after the studio school. I'm taking a break. But then I was at the Modern, and there's that painting, the Chateau Noir painting, where it's this kind of very moody castle-like house on a hill with all these trees in front of it, and you see the chateau through the trees, and it's the same thing I was talking about. How you're looking back into, the subject, but it's very curated.
I remember another hero at the studio school was Piero della Francesca and Masaccio, and you look at their work, and there is a lot of layering. That's how they define space in those paintings. That's what kept them from being purely flat, because there wasn't a lot of perspective at that point. But there was a lot of layering.
So I take it you guys were suffering under the death of painting kind of a prohibition.
No, the studio school was like a little, it's like being in a monastery.
Yeah.
Still believing. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's changed. I don't know that the studio school now is what it was then. I think there's a different emphasis.
Another century.
Yeah. Hopefully, but I think we benefited from the legacy of abstract expressionism, which I don't know how prominent that is at that school anymore. But we were still getting like the dregs, right? The next generation after those guys. Actually, de Kooning visited the school. Guston visited the school. So that was still.
Yeah, people were around.
So in both your works, layering is never, it's just a natural outgrowth of this early experience with charcoal and erasers then?
No, not for me.
I mean, it's not a polemic or what do you call it, a kind of hammer that you're going at the world with. This needs to be done. It's hard to find an artist that is doing that.
That's complicated. In fact, that's what I was going to get back to what you were saying before, because you were talking about Solowit's instructions as a kind of layering.
Yeah, because step 3 had to be done before step 6, right? I mean, it was necessary.
Right. Oh, that's what you're talking about.
You know what I mean? It's that's the layers of it. I mean, much like cooking instructions. Instructions. You have to boil the noodles before you put it into the saucepan. I mean, it's you don't do it the other way around.
But I'd also think that there's kind of a two prongs here. That there's the technical, what layering, what happens in a painting with the layering, but then there's also what kind of image forms in the painting, and what kind of world your image is living in. I think is the main highway that you're driving on, right? That the layering is a means to get there, but the images are made possible through the layering.
But it's interesting to me, and let me throw this in there, that we've arrived at where your vision, in a way, anticipated. I think right now at this moment in our 21st century, summer 2026, I think everybody feels in the Whitney, I haven't been to the Whitney show yet, but the reviews are all saying the same thing. We don't know what to believe. There is no driving zeitgeist. It's, and everyone is sniping at each other for not doing the thing that they're anticipating, but there's no overarching singular vision for the art world that can be campaigned on, or in geopolitics right now. I mean, it's hard to understand what's up and down, which narrative is right. I mean, there's all kinds of different layers of information that we have to, in a way, we're forced to entertain contradictory narratives at once before you can settle in. You can't settle in too quickly, or you're likely to be wrong very fast. So you have to, let information come in and then live with that ambiguity. And so in a way, your work's been, from my perspective, could be, in a way, not illustrating, but embodying the life we're living right now. And this moment.
But we're living in a time of image glut and also information glut.
Right.
So there's too much of both, and everything is layered. I'm not sure I agree that, it's hard to know what's right or wrong, because it seems like
No,
what's wrong is
actually-
becoming
what's actually happening or what's not,
yeah, I mean, in some ways things seem to have gotten ridiculously blatant and simplified. But I was wondering to what extent this idea of layering in your mind was also metaphorical. So we're kind of getting at that, I guess.
And when I was doing it in grad school, you mean?
No. In terms of wanting to talk about this,
Oh, I see.
like just to what extent, like when we get to my studio, I'll talk about how I see layering, and it has, I think it has aspects that are not just internal to the painting. So
Okay.
and I'm sure that's true for you too. I mean, one thing I was wondering about is that I think I've seen other paintings of yours where the configurations kind of resolve themselves into figures. Is that right? But not these, right? Or,
Well, I mean, there's certainly, gesture and what the lines do.
Yeah.
So, there's gravity, but like people would ask, some people ask me, what's your painting about? As if it's about one topic.
right.
Or it's a painting of a bunny and an Easter egg. Well, actually, it's about a lot of things, and looking at the painting, you can go through. You can see it so many different ways that it's not a monolith in my mind.
Do you consider them abstract paintings?
But that's a difficult question.
Is
That's
it?
an excellent
It's a difficult question for me. I didn't
Yeah,
know if it was also for you.
yeah.
But-
I'm not really sure. I mean, I think about it sometimes, but
Is the distinction all that important anymore? I mean, when abstraction was struggling to be seen, to be realized, it was very important, but I think we've lived through so many decades since, the emergence of photography, displacing representation, and, everything that came out of that. I wonder.
I have this kind of cute phrase that I put out there a few times, I think in print also, where it's really hard to make an abstract painting now that is not a picture of an abstract painting. And I wouldn't apply that so much to your work, actually. I think there's a lot of abstract painting that has so many precedents, antecedents, so many antecedents, so many versions of something very much like it have been painted by many other people. So it's hard to not see a lot of abstract painting as a picture of an abstract painting.
Well, that's what zombie formalism collapsed into, right? They just sort of gave into that and just tried to do a version of the greats or something like that, and relaxed into the fact that they're not going to invent something new. So let's just do something that echoes a greatness into it, and that's we're happy with the echo.
I just read Hilton Als wrote a review of the Whitney Biennial in the current New Yorker, and I love his writing. I think he's brilliant, and that's his condemnation or his critique of the Whitney Biennial, is that most of the work seems to be echoing innovative work from before.
So it's bridging that zombie painting moment then.
Well,
I mean, zombie painting is like from the years of what, 2005 to 14 or something like that?
Didn't Jerry Saltz coin that phrase, or was it somebody else? I always thought that
somebody
referred
else.
to something that was sort of abstract by default, like it kind of was trying to be both abstract and something else. But I might be wrong. I don't know.
Binary.
Yeah.
But the funny part, talking about things repeating, it is like working from a model, although it's not a person. It's
Yeah,
what
yeah.
someone else did before.
And are you aware? I mean, the one antecedent I could think of with your work is it A.R. Pank? You know.
Oh, yeah.
And his were figures.
Yeah.
But there's some resemblance there. But when I was seeing figures in your paintings in previous series, I thought of A.R. Pank, I think. But you know, he didn't work with this activated field.
Yeah.
The way that-
And I mean, I think definitely I loved that work when it first came to New York, but I don't look at it that much anymore.
Yeah, I don't know who I don't. Yeah, I think your influences that's something you're aware of in the early days, and then you kind of forget about it. Yeah.
Is there a pedigree of influence, though? I mean, I've written down something about maybe Stuart Davis, maybe Picabia. I mean, is there a kind of,
I mean, over
Patient Zero
I think
of Larry?
over the years you have your crushes, right? So Stuart Davis definitely was one. Milton Avery was another one. Mondrian.
And where are you driving?
Where am I driving the paintings to?
Yeah. I mean, there's an arc from where you began.
Yeah.
I would love to know that, actually. And up till now, but is there an implication of where it's going?
I'm hoping I'm going to float up in this world of color. So that's my ambition, and my ambition also is to.
Oh, the line is color conversation that we had earlier.
Yeah, but to really be able to work with less layers. You know, keep that white canvas going through. You know, and when you drop in a new layer, it's you never know what's going to happen. And
there's a limiting function then. There's a sort of a feeling of danger that you can't. You know, there's too many layers of confusion or something, or dilution or something like that.
Well, it's also that if I'm drawing what I know, to me it's not so interesting. But if I'm putting myself into drawing something I don't know, then I can find things that if I knew what I was doing the whole time, I would never stumble onto them. So it's about trying things out and also reacting. The reacting is as important as the initial doing.
And when you say things you don't know, you mean like the way colors and forms are interacting produces something that was unexpected?
Yeah, and maybe leads me into, you have to get this color out of the painting because it's blocking something happening.
You said that happened in this painting, that what is now gray was a much stronger color before.
It was like a turquoise, a blue turquoise. It changed a number of times.
Interesting that you don't see. I'm trying to see some of those colors bleeding through.
You can see.
Oh, on that edge.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, go to the edges to find out what was underneath.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like this painting a lot.
Thank you.
I like how thin it is. And the yellow is all primary, right?
Yeah.
That is, where you see actual yellow, it's untouched.
That's the first touch.
That's the first touch.
Oh, my sense of it was earlier. That's why I was asking you questions earlier about the masking, or that there's a kind of line that's just an absence of wash. That's why I kept talking about this being like a wash to knock back something, and then you bring in new structures over the top of it.
Yeah.
But I have it completely wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, no, but that happens, right? Like,
Well, I can. I'll bring out
Okay.
a painting that I'm just starting.
what's interesting, one thing that's interesting is this snake-like form
Right.
never shows up on the top layer. They
No.
always end up
No.
becoming more
But this,
angular. But that's like a wash that's going over the yellow and going over other things. So there are places where there's actual overlap, and that's creating color. And then there are these other places like these darks where he's literally painting in the overlap. So I'm curious why you don't necessarily think of yourself as an abstract painter, though.
why what?
Why you don't necessarily think of yourself as an abstract painter. In
Well,
other words, because is it because these structures relate to structures that exist in the world? Like this one, I'm actually seeing it more in this one, which,
Like a building?
yeah, like building structures, like scaffolding, for
Yeah.
example.
Well,
Yeah.
well, like one of my working themes is outside New York, like looking across the river, for instance.
Yeah.
You see all these buildings, and I kind of look at it as one building, and that energizes me. I like that idea. So,
Yeah.
I'm dropping them down. This probably will get some. I'll draw in with line, whatever the next layer is going to be.
It's interesting because the view, because on the drive over here you mentioned you're looking into Manhattan from the Navy Yard,
Right.
and sometimes you mistake downtown for uptown and
Yeah.
vice versa. And the effect of that is what you're seeing is a kind of a collapse of depth in a way, right?
Yeah.
And yet you're reasserting the depth in the paintings from your inspiration. There's sort of this depth play going on from what you're being inspired by, which is that collapse and the expansion of that depth in some other dimension in your paintings. And that these are urban paintings, but I would just say this painting, certainly.
Yeah, but I think they're pretty much outdoor sense of scale.
They're urban. The figures, the motifs definitely feel urban, but the sensation of looking through feels very much like forest. Of like looking through things to other things that are similar but behind, and
Also known as trees.
trees and bushes, and
But the normal construction is figure in a landscape. But you can turn it around and have landscape in a figure, and that works better for me. But really, the idea of being a figurative painter, where there's a model and you're addressing that as your subject, I'm not in that at all.
No, you're not in that.
I'm savoring the landscape in the figure inversion. I think it's quite interesting to
Because it's
dwell on.
It's
Yeah.
also psychological.
How so?
Well, what does that landscape look like? And what kind of mood does that create?
Do you think there's an element of anxiety in this work?
That I don't know.
I mean, because ultimately you're wanting to make something harmonious or beautiful. That's one
But
objective,
lines
right?
and tension naturally go together, right?
What did you say?
Lines and tension naturally go together.
Lines and tension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said intention. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not lines and compression.
Right.
And tension is a psychological state.
But
Yeah,
I'm trying to make something that the parts sum up more than, the whole sums up more than the parts, and like a complete thought,
I think that's called a gestalt.
or I would say complete thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, you're also creating, depth, but air. There's a lot of air created by these overlapping forms and the sense of penetration and.
I think painting's so magical that have this flat surface that the illusion is so powerful, and also that we've gone from we've moved into a digital world from what we grew up with, the analog,
which has multiplicities.
That's so revolutionary.
Right, and the issue of layering is ubiquitous. Photoshop, and at least in iMovie, where I'm going to edit this video, this idea of stacking and layers and combining things like that. I mean, this idea of layers is it's kind of baked into contemporary life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and under it all is code.
Right.
That's the bottom layer, right?
Right.
It's all code.
Algorithm.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap this up and then we'll
Cool.
move on.
It was good.
For you guys.
Good.
Normally they're scattered all over the floor then. huh?
Normally they're scattered all over the floor, right? I'm trying to keep these stencils kind of updated. So like this is Anthropic, which has been in the news a lot, right? Anthropic has been at war with in litigation with the Pentagon.
Right.
So this is actually Claude, their AI, I think. John Deere. This is Tesla. Upside down.
So you keep the ones you're currently using on a painting on the line here.
No, this is for them to dry.
Okay, so we're at Adam's Simon Studio in Ridgewood, and we're going to talk about Adam's paintings in the context of our conversation about layers. And any ideas or themes that you think carry through from our previous conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think. Would you like to talk a little bit about the paintings first? And
I could, because what strikes me right away is that layering has almost like a different intent in my work, because I'm dealing with recognizable imagery. Some people tend to look at these paintings more as abstract paintings. And then Gwen recently said to me, it doesn't matter what the images are. And I said, no, it matters to me, So the fact that these are all, at this moment, probably pretty recognizable to a lot of people. They will become less and less recognizable in time. But in a way, one of the things that the layering is doing for me is undercutting the degree of recognition.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important to me. And it also, I think, has a kind of metaphorical function where since corporate branding or corporate logos, they're pretty omnipresent, but they also function kind of subliminally. So the layering has a relationship to that, the idea of subliminal imagery. But mostly I think maybe the most important function for me, which I think is also true for your work, is it's a question of time. So there's a time element to that layering introduces. So everything is not immediately visible or apparent, and things are revealed in time.
Right.
And that's important. These are all important functions of layering.
The time being the recognition of the sources of each of the imagery, the corporate logos that constitute the figures in your paintings, right?
Right, and you can kind of experience it as you look at them. I'm the only one that doesn't get to have this experience in a way. Is that, you know, you're scanning, your eye is scanning and taking in shapes and color and you know, spatial representation, and then it'll recognize an image. You'll say, oh, that's the Barbie logo, or that's you know, X, or that's Twitter, or that's Mitsubishi. And that moment of recognition is a kind of disruption of the visual field. And so that kind of ping-ponging back and forth between recognition and
Right.
and what you get from abstract painting.
Because the paintings seem to structure as very cloud-like
Yeah.
to me, and I don't read them. I don't read the layers as flat against even though it's painted on flat. The effect looking at the canvas is looking into a cloud that has some dimension.
But a different kind of dimension, though, right?
Yeah,
The depth is different. It's how to say it. The depth is shallower. Is that the right way to say it?
I think it is a shallow depth, and then that has something to do with what the ground color is.
Right.
Like this one almost has no ground color left, and that I'm still trying to figure out if I want to reintroduce more of the ground color and like open up the space a little bit, have it be less compressed. But the blue one actually was a different, that ground color, that blue was different. I actually made, and it actually was for this one too, in the red one, in both cases, towards the end of working on these paintings, I made a stencil that was the size of the whole painting, and cut out all of the
All the voids or the
all the interstices. How do you say that? Interstices or interstices?
Yeah.
Right.
Whichever it is. So I cut out all these, made a stencil that included all of these spaces, and changed that color.
See, that's very interesting, because I think what your eye does when you first see the paintings is you're not necessarily looking to identify the logos. You're identifying areas that move
That's great.
between them.
That's wonderful to hear.
Yeah, but like in this painting, which I'm facing, the areas that have been gone over the most are the whitest areas.
That's
correct?
right. Yeah.
Which is the opposite of many painting
that start white.
variations where you start white.
Yeah.
And so that kind of forms an initial passage for my eyes into the.
It's also a key to stratification, right? The wider, the more elevated or more recent
the more recent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also I've made like a whole series of paintings that consisted of the stencils that I made when I decided like an area like this, I actually needed to come up a little bit, so I would cut that overlapping shape. You know, it's kind of like in your paintings where you paint back in.
It's the same, the overlap, we're doing something similar.
Yeah. And so I have a collection, I do have them here, a collection of stencils from all the times that I decided to rework an area of overlap, and I've made paintings just of, you've actually seen them, Dennis. Yeah. So they're all fragments, fragments of images. So
you're using everything. You're being really ecological. You're using all of the parts of the paintings in a way that can be reused.
Yes, but also it's interesting that you introduced that idea, because I am kind of aware of the fact that there's almost like an ecological basis to everything that I've done for the last number of decades, because at some point I didn't decide, but I just became kind of incapable of doing what you do, which is to start with like a bare canvas and just start working on it. Like something had to be recycled for me to make a painting.
Yeah.
So at first it was the New York Times that I was using the actual paper to work on top of, and then it was wedding announcements, and then it was stock photography, and then I worked with art historical imagery, and then corporate logos, but always recycling something that was already out there. And it's not exactly ecological, but the idea of recycling, even just imagery, I think became part of what I was doing.
Or reducing the wastage, at least, right?
But it's kind of weird, because in this case, it's what's the wastage? It's like you don't want too many. You don't want more images in the world or something like that. You don't. It's more like
but
too much creative stuff out there.
But when you're taking, say, you're taking a template of where the red ground is painted on that painting, by reusing that, you're moving, you're keeping that scale into the new painting.
Wait, no.
Like whatever, if you're taking a template from this painting into a new canvas.
Well, no, just the images, not the ground color.
But I thought you painted the ground color again.
In other words, I just changed that color.
Do you ever? Oh, you just changed.
I just changed that color, and I changed the blue in this one. In both cases, I wasn't the gray one behind Dennis is one where I didn't do that. That kind of purple gray is the original ground color, and everything you see there is just white on that ground color, right? It's just thin layers of white paint.
Right.
And I'm very happy with that painting, but in these other two, by the time I got to the point where it was kind of saturated with images, I wanted something different from that ground color, so I changed it. So like if you look at, it's less clear in this one than it is in the blue one actually, but this color here should be this color with just thin white paint over it, but it's not. And in the blue one you can see it more easily. It's like those grays do not come about from thin white paint over that blue.
Right. But it kind of pops the space.
Yeah, it pops the space, right.
It's interesting that the stencils keep their scale, right, naturally. They don't change scale unless you create a new stencil.
But I do. I've got multiple versions of most of these images. I've got them this size, I've got them just, they usually start out just like a couple of inches, and then I have a opaque projector, and I can make them whatever size I want, and I'm constantly making new versions of the same images.
So when you started painting, will you limit yourself to like 6 logos, or?
No, but I will limit myself to a certain scale. So these are all using a certain scale of image. I don't have any small ones. I don't have any really large ones. Whereas I have paintings from that Studio 10 show where the stencil was like 6 by 5 feet for just a single image. I don't tend to use those much anymore, but
So this is an attack on layers that is, maybe attack's not the right word, the approach to layering and painting that's not like yours, Colin. It's not, the issue of depth is much more extensive. There's much more, the number of options are wider in terms of like it's drawing base, and there you can construct it at will. Your reservoir of images to manifest as layers and stencils are stenciled on, and they're a kind of fixed resource in the sense that you have you can multiply it by scale and number, but they're fixed in terms of the catalog of logos and
mark making.
And mark making.
Yeah.
Well,
No, and that's definitely part of my, if you want to call it agenda, is to kind of edit myself out as much as possible, like to reduce my own level of agency, and then in like this painting now, I'm trying to go even further and reduce the level of visibility. And my idea was, it hasn't happened really, but my idea was, if I just keep pushing this even further, will it get so that the individual images start to all cohere into a single mass? And could that be interesting?
I think that's happening in these.
You think, is it happening in all of them?
I see it in that one.
Okay.
at least in the center of the painting.
Yeah, so I was trying to make the whole painting be like the center of that painting in this one. But something's, I feel like, not quite working. Like I'm tempted to do what I did in these two and to...
Do the ground up.
Yeah, go to all the, what did we decide was the pronunciation?
Interstices.
Interstices, we think they're right, not interstices. Mm-hmm. Yeah, interstices. There's not that many of them left, but if that, I'm almost tempted to make them white. Like, if all of this, and then there's actually areas where I've tried to sort of semi-eliminate them, like here. And it would be a little bit hard because I've kind of hit a lot of them with like a little dab of the roller, just to try to do what I'm thinking I need to do more overtly. If they all became white, I'm wondering what would happen. Would it be interesting, or would it just become incoherent?
Well, the one thing about painting is you have to do it to find out.
To find out,
Right.
yeah, right. And I actually had somebody in here at an earlier stage in this painting, and and I had this conversation with him where I said, his name is Rufus Tureen. I think you guys, I don't know, I think he was at the last Dallas barbecue, I think. But anyway, I said to him, yeah, I could take this painting further, I could keep layering and layering just to see where it would go, but it's a really good painting right now the way it is. and he said, you can lose this painting, you got lots of paintings, you can lose this painting, you got all those paintings in the racks. And so
I'd say paint another painting and get it to that point.
that's what I said to him. I said I think I'll maybe leave this because it's really working well right now, and I'll do it at another painting. I'll do another painting, but that's a lot to get to that, like it.
Yeah.
It's weeks of work and involvement, and
But I mean, one thing I'm seeing in the paintings is that there's an embrace of randomness too.
Thank you.
That you don't know, you can't really plan out what's going to happen with the white overlaps.
Right.
You have to do it, and then it tells you.
Right. Yeah, that's also this kind of limiting of my own agency.
Yeah.
Randomness. I think we were talking about this at Ptolemy. How random is this? Like, and I think Gwen was saying, no, it's not random because you decide you're going to put this image on top of this image.
Yeah, but you have no idea how it's gonna, how it's gonna happen over an entire canvas.
Well, he does have a point.
Right.
They are arranged, to the degree that you can anticipate, and then you see after you roll it that
Yeah.
whether it's satisfactory, but it's no different than, as you said earlier, that every artist is, curious about what if I did this, and then you have to see after you did that, and then,
Yeah.
if you can wipe it away, you do, or if you don't, you deal with that.
And one of the things that Colin and I have in common, I think, is that both of our work reveals its history. And that's part of the whole theme of layering. It's like you're revealing the history of the making of the painting.
Transparency, honesty, maybe.
But I also recently realized that these actually are history paintings, because these logos that I'm using span 50 years, and a lot of them are now obsolete. I'm using the Sprint logo. See, this is the Sprint logo here. It's probably over in this one too. That doesn't exist anymore. Sprint doesn't exist anymore. In 30 years or 20 years, maybe none of these will still be in use.
It was kind of an archaeological thing, like, the bottom of the seed bed that's dug up in the side of the hill.
Right. So at that point, they will become, like representations of a former time or something like that.
And not really lost either. It's like Hans Holbein's flowers arranged in one of his self-portraits. There's sort of indicating his recent marriage or something like that, or the fragility of life or something in the glass. That it's, and all these things are intended. In those days, all those codes of meaning still mattered, and yet we still have enough record of those codes of meaning.
That's a good point.
If you wanted access, you could find access. So.
Those vanitas paintings.
Right.
That's what they were called, right? Yeah. I like. There's two conceits of mine. One is, and this is recent because it's only, thinking about these in historical terms. One conceit is to think like, people could be poring over this painting and say, I just found out what that represents. It was this company, and it was active in the, early 2000s. So, and the other conceit is that, like, if somebody owned one of these paintings, for example, that maybe like after a period of months or even years, they would see something that they'd been staring at it all along, and they hadn't seen. And actually, I have a great anecdote about that. I worked for this art dealer named James Goodman at a gallery on the Upper East Side. I don't think it still exists, but at one point my job was to go to his apartment and wrap all of this precious, like priceless artwork that he owned, because they were moving across town to the Dakota building, actually. And I was there with the maid, and and I was wrapping this de Kooning drawing, and it was from the series, which is I think called the Rowboat series, and it's basically a spread-legged woman, like full frontal and nude, in the de Kooning sense of nude, and this the maid, who I can't remember what her name was, but she said, "Oh, that." She said, "When the Goodmans first got that, I thought, are they crazy? Are they kidding me? A 2-year-old could have made that, And she said, "But I do the dusting, and I would be dusting it. And then one time I looked at it, and I said, oh wait, that's a foot." And then weeks later, I see, that's a face, And then she said, and then I could see the whole thing, and I said to myself, that's a nasty drawing. So I love that story, and I told her, I said, the guy who did that, Willem de Kooning, if you told him that story, he would have loved that story because of how much time it took, to see the entirety, and I have that conceit about my work, like it could take a lot of time for somebody to see everything that they're looking at anytime they look at it. So.
Right, because it's circular. I mean, the layers are circular, that you're circulating through one layer and seeing others behind it.
Yeah.
Can I just,
Absolutely.
excuse me one sec.
Explain what you mean by circular.
So when you're looking at the painting and the image is made up of all these different layers that you have to go back. You have to go back through the last layer to really put the image together. So you're going back and forth all the time.
Yeah, yeah. And I do get some pleasure out of the fact that I don't always see things right away. You know, like there are areas within one of these paintings where it takes me a little while of looking to realize. I mean, there's nothing on there that's not one logo on top of another. There's no just, you know, well, actually I was just pointing to something in this painting where I kind of cheated, but for all intents and purposes, the only paint that goes on through a stencil, so it's always a logo.
But was that red was not exactly that red before?
It
right?
was not that color, but it was that
that shape.
The drawing didn't change.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Is this painting, am I seeing a landscape in the sense that the CBS logo is the sun?
No.
Okay.
Well, you could be.
I mean, yes, if it works that way for you.
I see it is.
I think that also you might be connecting the sun, what you're seeing as the sun, which is the CBS logo, to the Monsanto logo,
Right.
which is the vine.
Uh-huh.
And the Monsanto logo is one that nobody recognizes because it's just a little motif that shows up at the end of the name.
So are there, like in this painting, are there any strokes that are not logo oriented?
So the only thing I did was like this anthropic logo here was just grabbing my eye. And actually it was Michelle, she came in here and she said, you got to do something about that. That's just, you know, it's not a good logo. And I actually like it as a logo because the actual, when you see it like on the internet or whatever, it's nice and it's rough. You know, it's not an elegant shape. But she was saying, you know, it's too prominent. So I actually dabbed with a roller to try to integrate it more, and that's very unusual for me to do that. Otherwise, everything is rolled through a stencil, and it's just the result of overlap. And you know, there are places where it's like really hard for me to know, like, what the hell, what is this? Where did that come from? And it would take me a while to figure it out. I think it might. See, I don't know what that's from, but I know that it's from like one logo on top of another logo on top of another logo on top of another logo produces that area. And the whole idea of this painting was to see how far I could go with that before it just becomes completely a fucking mess. And I think it's pretty close to being a fucking mess, but
would you ever think of taking that as a ground and then using a darker tone for the...
you know, that's probably an interesting idea. But again, it's sort of like more decision making than I tend to let myself do. I try to... There's actually an aspect of automatism to this, you know, of just like letting the non-thinking mind take over. I mean, there's a lot of thought that goes into
setting myself up,
and also why I do what I do is something that it's not like I spend a lot of time thinking about it, but I'm like, for example, I'm interested in this merging of abstraction with commentary, something like that. I don't know what else to call it. Commentary, having the content, the subject matter, be significant, you know, and I think there's nothing more significant to be using than these images, because they shape our lives more than anything else. You know, they are kind of like the icons of our time. So so I use them very purposefully, without wanting to make didactic paintings. I don't want to make didactic paintings. So that's where the abstraction comes into play.
But that's the tension, right? I mean, you want commentary, and maybe a specific kind of commentary, and then you want them to be relevant.
Yeah, but yes, and I want it to be on an almost subliminal level.
Which is why you submerge them into clouds, essentially.
Yeah, yeah.
But also the images are transactional images in terms of you, as you living in this culture, are working for these corporations. By
Me.
anyone.
Oh,
you know,
anyone.
By, you know,
Yeah.
by having a telephone, by having, you know.
Right.
But you're taking, instead of them using you with the paintings, you're using them, which is kind of funny.
So I have had that said. I've also had people say, "You're just advertising these companies," you know.
But,
And for I had a different version of that arrangement, that McDonald's arrangement, that was exhibited in a gallery in Manhattan, and the dealer came to me and said, I'm thinking of approaching McDonald's about buying this. And I said, oh no, you can't do that. And he said, why not? And I said, I'm so sorry, I should have said this to you before, but the problem with you doing that would just be that it would completely change the meaning of the painting. It would become just promotional.
A supplicant.
Right.
Yeah, a supplicant
So
for powers that
it would put you back in the position that you were subverting to begin with.
Right, but then afterwards I
You have to
realized,
sell it to Burger King instead.
well, afterwards I decided I had no right to say that. You know, like, unless it was going to be in a contract before they took the work or something. I can't tell them who they can't sell it to. But I'm glad he didn't. I think I am. I don't know.
As you're talking, I'm thinking about the word dissolution came to mind. And then a little bit later on, a few beats later, I thought about how entropy is illustrated by stirring cream into the coffee, you know. You know, and that the idea that you could, if time could be reversed, it reverses the entropy, so then the cream comes back up. So in a way, these are billows of clouds of these logos that are becoming, with the entropy of the paintings, become more lost, and yet you want the audience, the viewer, to, with time, reverse that dissolution and pulling out these different, you know, elements that touched our lives in different generations, you know. So
and also, I mean, to be honest, there's the fact that I'm very attached to a lot of these images. You know, a lot of them I find very compelling as images, and I also don't feel like they simply represent corporations. They also have a function in the world in terms of their dissemination and a kind of ownership that people have in relation to these images. That,
a marker of an epoch, right?
Yeah, and
like
also
the Shell logo meant something more in 1970 than it does today. Maybe.
Or, you know, people wearing Ralph Lauren outfits that say Ralph Lauren on them.
Yeah, but it also says who they want to be, who they are.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a moment when I was driving to. We used to swim in Crown Heights. We drive into the pool and pass a bodega, and they were like 7 or 8 teenage boys outside, and they had Nike all over them, you know, and I just thought, yeah, sure, they're advertising the company, but they're also like
appropriating it too.
Yeah.
It's like the Russian,
Yeah.
what do you call those guys in the street? There's a word for them. But they're wearing Adidas 3 Stripes for Life, you know, that kind of, to wear that means you belong to something very Russian adolescent,
Yeah.
rather than belonging to Adidas or something.
Right.
I mean, I almost think of it like, like I think of these images as being comparable to religious icons in the 12th century or 14th century or whatever. And yes, they represented the power of the church, you could say that, but they had such personal meaning for individual people. And I'm not saying these have that kind of personal meaning for individual people, but they have some kind of personal function. So I think it's complex territory, and its equivalence is something like abstract painting. You know what I mean? An equivalent level of complexity is something like abstract painting. I think that this merging of this field of imagery with the idea of all over abstraction makes sense to me. Like they're comparable. Like there's a kind of equivalency, I think.
It's like pop being force fed or force pressed into the grid of AbEx in a way, right? That all over being a condition where the popular imagery is just sort of in a way pressed through that, and whatever emerges is what you've got.
But I think one difference there is that in a lot of pop you're getting the image turned into the object. So it would be like Lichtenstein doing the comics or Johns doing the coffee tin. And if you go back even further to Stuart Davis, for instance, he would see a billboard and or tugboats and ropes and stuff like that, and he brought that vernacular world into his paintings as subject. Yeah. But then you get Lichtenstein and Johns who are taking that vernacular and making it into object.
Oh yeah, right.
And I think
it becomes singular again.
Yes, but I see you going back into the water. That it's a much more you have a mix going on.
I like water.
But I know you like water.
No. I mean, I like your use of that word. Liquidity. There's a liquidity that I want, and liquidity in the sense of like ever changing too, like the way water is always.
Heraclitus is river, right?
I don't know anything.
Heraclitus is stream. It's a story he told about everything in constant change. Everything's in flux.
Yeah.
You never step in the same river twice, and you're never the same person either. Kind of idea.
Yeah. Right. And I think that's true of your paintings too. I think there's this constant flux, constant shifting, and that makes it something that's alive, as opposed to so much art that is pretty fixed.
Yeah.
There is a difference in the flux though between you two, in the sense there's a character of angularity in your work, Colin. There's a sense of that kind of thing where in atoms it's this billowing, it's a difference of character only,
I mean, when you presented this theme of layering, it sort of prompted some trains of thought, like what layering signified to me, because I think a lot of what we're talking about is layering. It's not just purely visual layering. It's also relates to subject and content and what something means in the world. So I think layering is a good
I think
term.
It's important to open it up, to talk about it. It's what artists are making now. It's not just in your two studios, but there are many other significant artists that relied on it today and in history. But in this part of history, it seems to matter to shine a light on it and to talk about our thoughts and open the topic up a little bit to see where it goes. But it sounds like a good place to end.
Yeah,
that
very
does
nice.
sound like
Thank
an
you.
ending. Yeah, that's good.